The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHG. Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, the 9th of April, 2026. We're live here for Financial Rebellion on CHD TV. Good morning, Catherine and Carolyn.
Good morning, Polly.
All right, now let's go to our first piece of news, which we're going to cover very quickly. It'll be coming up on screen any second now.
Autism.
There we go. The 7 key signs of autism in adults aged 40 and over. And I think you sent this to us, Catherine. And this article basically talks about how there's all of these people over 40 that have autism and never got diagnosed. I have a massive issue with that because I'm just nearly 60. And I can tell you that when I was a child, there was not autism in our schools. I mean, even if there was a bit of autism, we didn't see it. It wasn't in our schools like it is now. So take from back then to where we are now, you know, where Billy couldn't even sit on a chair, so couldn't go to school. There's special needs schools set up everywhere. I'd never heard of autism. The first time I heard the word autism was when the health visitor said to me, when Billy was 18 months, he's showing signs of autism. And I asked her what it is. And she said, you need to go to a library and look it up because we didn't have all this technology. And it took me ages to find a book. And it said, autism is very rare. And it's one of the worst afflictions that a child can have. And they will be institutionalized. That was autism back in the day. So don't tell me all these people my age and even a bit younger have autism and it was never diagnosed. It would have taken, a bunny rabbit could have diagnosed.
So I think we need to change the language because what it should say is symptoms of severe neurological damage from toxicity, right?
Yeah, vaccine.
Because it's simply the symptoms of poisoning.
That's right. It is.
Right. It's not a disease. If I'm poisoned and I become toxic and I have the symptoms of extreme toxicity, I don't have a disease. I have the symptoms of poisoning. So I think if we're going to communicate successfully what autism is, we need to describe it what it is. It's severe neurological damage resulting from poisoning.
But what they're trying to do with this article, as you clearly point out, is they're trying to normalize it. So again, Billy can't live an independent life. I'm just going to use him as an example. So what are they saying? All these high-functioning people running around really do have... I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean,
Elon Musk, right?
You can't misdiagnose. Yeah,
it's not that bad.
Oh, it infuriates me so much. So there's going to be more articles like this because they're panicking.
Well, but here's the beauty of where we are. So I was talking about how I feel like you and your whole operation are being unleashed. And one of the things and because I'm feeling very unleashed these days, not to say that I haven't been relatively unleashed for 30 years, but one of the things about the MAHA group trying to make real progress on both vaccines as well as nutrition is that effort has been able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a great poisoning and it is intentional because Washington will not stop doing it. They are absolutely committed to creating as many severely neurologically damaged people as possible and as many chronically ill people as possible. And they're absolutely committed to it, despite the fact that it's bankrupting the country. It's quite extraordinary, but the MAHA group have been able to document and prove that beyond any shadow of a doubt. I don't know. Do you guys agree with me?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a very sick, evil world. And unfortunately, people like me fell into the trap without thinking. So there's that.
Well, you can't fathom that it could be this way. I think it's perfectly normal for people capable of empathy to not be able to understand that there's, 2 to 5% of the population who doesn't feel it and are happy to organize and advantage themselves by killing other people.
And we've destroyed so many lives. I mean, Billy's
Oh, I
life
know.
destroyed, and he's one of so many. They say it's 1 in 31 or 1 in 36. That it's way.
I don't feel that it's destroyed because he's such a beautiful young man. I met
Well,
him when I was down in Austin, and he is a beautiful young man, and he's very happy. He loves his family, and he's living in a beautiful place, and he's a very happy young man.
but it wasn't
So,
his life as God set it out to be. Like he lived 13 months as God wanted him to live, and then
right,
we poisoned him. So
right,
anyway, we could be talking about this forever and a day but I know there's great many
right. If he wasn't autistic, he would be a heartbreaker, right?
he tries to break heart. I mean, it's just a sad thing. Desperate for girlfriend, desperate for friends, will never drive a car. All those things that
Right,
Ryan Hooker so well said when he was at the Ron Johnson hearing. The list is endless of what will not
right,
happen to those boys because of one moment in time, one jab.
right,
So
right. And
all
it was intentional.
yeah, and we
Right.
were blind to see it. But the good news is the future generations, the siblings of all those people are awake. They are not vaccinating their children, and they will never, no matter what happens. So in a
So I'm
way,
going to
it's
be a bad
backfired.
guy unless we get the guardrails up on programmable money.
Mhm.
They're going to use that to force vaccinations. And that's why everybody in the health freedom movement and everybody in the food freedom movement need to help us to get the legislation passed at the state level that says you can't use programmable money to strip people of their basic constitutional rights, including health freedom.
Good point.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
Speaking of which, we just did, we've done many briefings on this issue of the digital control grid, but we have model legislation to help states put up guardrails so that programmable money can't be used to strip us of our basic human and constitutional rights. And so we have this model legislation, and we have a lawyer now working full time to manage that and keep it up to date. And we've worked with several states to get those bills passed. We got it passed in Utah, or Utah did pass it. I can't take credit for that. And then we got close to passing in Idaho. Hopefully we can do that next year. And then Tennessee, we got slaughtered. I got slaughtered in my hometown state. We couldn't even get out of committee. But we learned a lot. We've redone that legislation. And at the end of this month, we're having a part 3. And these 3 briefings are at the legislative detail level. This is the nuts and bolts of how the legislation works, what the negotiations are, what you need to get this passed in state legislators. So that's open it's for legislators, but also the activists who work with them, staff that works with them. So it's free and it's live, and I strongly recommend it. We'll also have our Tennessee legislative attorney join, and Carolyn, of course, and I will be there. So you can sign up. If you go to Solari and go to our Financial Transaction Freedom website, you can get all the information and sign up and reserve a slot. So
Great work.
we can only have 500 people. We can up the ante. We can up our software if we get more than 500 people, but we need to just know you're coming and reserve a slot.
Okay. Absolutely great. Right. Okay. What's our last piece? I think we have one more before we get into the show. Right. What's this about?
So there in northern Idaho, there is a great group of legislators, and they're members of the Freedom Caucus, led by one of the great leaders, is Representative Heather Scott. And this is from her Twitter feed. They outlawed digital ID. You can't be required in Idaho now to use you can't be required to need a digital ID to interact with the government. So this is fantastic, and it's
That's
something
great.
every state needs to do. This, if every state will pass legislation saying, you have to be able to interact with state government without a digital ID, you can't be required to have one. We also need to do it for cash. Makes an enormous difference in preventing the digital control grid.
And we need them to be required to have humans available to talk to you so that they don't do everything by AI. That's
Right.
the next thing I think they need.
Right. So here's the thing, Representative Scott is a perfect example of an amazing legislator. These are citizen legislators, so they have, jobs elsewhere. They're still working. And but they are smart, they are hardworking, they understand the issues, they work collaboratively with their other legislators, they're effective at getting bills passed. We need to support these people. These people are an amazing force for freedom. And if you're in Idaho, you need to support Representative Scott and the other members of the Freedom Caucus. But you need to find the Representative Scotts in your state and support them, because these people are making an enormous difference.
Yes, they are. I just want to point out, Catherine Austin Fitz is not wearing earpods in here. They are earrings. Okay, they are not earpods.
Right. But this one keeps slipping down. I keep grabbing it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
our viewers are AirPod watchers, but they are not AirPods. They're
not.
earrings. Catherine
They're
knows way
pearls.
better than that. They're
These are pearls. Yes, these are
Right,
pearls.
let's talk about our show, Imposters. So it's got a bigger title, but it is basically about imposters. Be social media imposters. Be aware, social media imposters and scammers pretending to be Catherine. Now, we did talk about this a little bit last week, but we're going to talk about imposters way more in this show.
So what everybody keeps saying is, well, Catherine, you must be over the target. because we are just dealing with a blossoming, it's springtime, so it's blossoming. We are blossoming scammers and imposters. And a lot of I'm a member of the independent media group run by Ryan Christian at Last American Vagabond, and that group, including Whitney Webb, they're dealing with the same thing. It's just enormous number of imposters and scammers pretending to be us and causing all sorts of crazy making. But in our case, because I talk about money, they're trying. It appears from what we had reported to us, and again, you're assuming these reports are accurate, but you never know. So disclaimer ahead. They're trying to scam people for money, and in fact, if you look at some of the things that have been proposed, it could scam people for very serious money. And if you look at the different statistics on cybercrime, it's exploding as well. We're going to talk about the FBI's new report that just came out on April 6th. And it's a report I track every year of just the cybercrimes reported to them. It's up over 20% in the last year. So 2025 over 2024. And the losses, now we're up to, I think, $21 billion, almost $21 billion of losses. And what the FBI will tell you, and what I will tell you, and I know Carolyn will tell you, is these crimes tend to be dramatically underreported. So if the FBI is getting reports of 20 billion, it wouldn't surprise me if the real number is over 100 billion. Do you think that's fair, Carolyn?
Oh, I think it's higher than that, but
right,
yeah.
Right.
The larger amounts that are scammed would tend to be reported to the FBI before the small amounts. But there are probably people losing small amounts in many, many, many people, and it mounts up.
Right. On their reports, the average loss is 20,000, I think, was what I saw in the report. So, but let's start in. And one of the things that has inspired Carolyn and I to spend a lot of time on dealing with imposters is right now we're dealing with a real serious imposter effort, and one that, from what I can tell, has major institutional protection, including from our friend Mr. Musk or his institutions. Anyway, Carolyn, you want to describe the Solari Imposters?
Yes, we have we have a whole lot of imposters, but they're doing things like creating fake X accounts, and there have been some other social media accounts created, but X is the one that we've been dealing with the most, and having not very much success in getting X to take them down, even though we know that people have been reporting to us that they also, when they see these things, have been reporting them to X. These are some of just the email accounts that have been created in Catherine's name. Now, the fact is, people go online and they search for Catherine Austin Fitz because they know of her, and they don't tend to look for Solari. So, the X account that is our real account is called Solari _ the, which is you know, sort of weird. But it's not in Catherine Austin Fitz's name. Now they have lifted that photograph. That's a fake one. And that's a real photograph, which we're going to now copyright. So that one of the problems is that when you have a trademark or a copyright, once you use something in commerce like a logo or even a name, if it's like Catherine, that's associated with a whole concept or a whole body of knowledge. Once you have that and you use it in commerce, you have a common law trademark. But the problem is X, when you say you want it taken down, wants to see that you filed it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So that's what we're in the process of. We're in the process of trademarking and copywriting. Photographs are copyrighted, and these accounts are the names of like Solari Report and things like that. Our logo, that's forget what's it called, Catherine?
An armillary.
Armillary.
It's a solar armillary.
That's what our logo is, and that also has been lifted. We have a fake X account that's at Austin Fit 676995, and that's the one that seems to originate the worst sales of services that aren't really going to be delivered to anyone in the name of Catherine. And Lou has a report that we had put together, and we have correspondence. You can see some of the correspondence with individuals who responded on X to something saying, we're going to help you invest your money. And this is something you see Catherine Austin Fitz. Catherine never wrote that.
Old timers like us. Come on.
Right. It's very sophisticated. And in one case, we found out that they were planning on using a Telegram crypto account to receive money. And understand that a Telegram crypto wallet account is not something that's easily traceable. If the FBI really wanted to find it, they probably could, but try getting that kind of attention for your particular problem. But one of these scams pretends to be Catherine Austin Fitz writing from a company called WealthWise. And there are a bunch of WealthWise. There's a WealthWise community. I think there is actually an entity called WealthWise. Whether that's real, there might be a real company called that, and somebody else is using that name and creating Catherine's email address to correspond with people. But I saw somewhere where they were wanting the person who responds to effectively an ad on X to talk about how much money they had and where their accounts were. And there was a $400,000 mentioned in one case. So, and people are giving this information to spoofers. So, we have two terms for the day that we'll go through. But one of our subscribers, now understand that Solari Report has a website. It's a public website, but if you're a subscriber, you get behind the paywall. And people have created accounts at Solari, and there's a whole procedure for communicating with Catherine and communicating with customer service. But somebody went on a fake site on X and was bilked out of $500 allegedly for a meeting with Catherine. Why, don't ever, if you're a subscriber to something and there is a real website, why would you be going through X to spend your money on a service? It would be.
So can I just point out one thing that's very strange? So we have somebody who runs our social media, and they have been constantly reporting to X over the last year that such and such was an imposter. X takes all of them down except for two, and this one, which is very sticky. And if you look at how many times we've reported this one, the one that appears to be bilking, and the amount of times that various other people on our behalf on X have reported to X, we think there's been over 100 reports to X that not only are these people frauds and imposters, but money's getting,
Yeah.
They're running it appears they're running an investment scam. X won't take them down. So
And there are friendly media sites wanting to post our links so that their followers will follow us. And they've put up the fake accounts, not realizing it. So even our friends are duped into thinking that, that a fake account is our account.
But why?
So what that means is I can't tell you now, we spend a lot of time every week letting people know who are signing up to follow these accounts, if they're followers of ours, that's a fake account, don't do that, or reposting stuff from the fake account, telling them not to do it. I've had to call over the world and tell allies, why are you reposting an imposter? Take that down. And they're getting tricked. They are getting,
If we follow a fake X account and we post, this is a fake X account, the person who owns the account takes that down. So we can't.
Well, we're blocked. We are blocked from looking at the replies or conversation on one of these accounts. We're blocked.
But Catherine, why won't X take down these 2 accounts? That's
You tell me. You tell me. You tell me. Now, what it feels like, and we are now in the process of hiring real professionals to help us, take it to the whole new next level, because we need to prove and document, because if you let this get out of hand, people can really get hurt. So, for example, the scam where they say, and this is based on what subscribers who've dealt with them have sent us. They're saying we can protect you from the great taking. The great taking is a theory that the regulators will essentially steal people's securities by using changes that have happened in securities management and regulation of custodian. And what I've been saying for a long time is don't worry about this. This is not your problem. Programmable money is your problem. They're gonna trade all securities with digital tokens, and they can take it through the distributed ledgers. Don't worry about the great taking. So one of this related fraudster account is promoting me saying all sorts of stuff, saying you need to worry about the great taking, and I've said the opposite. You don't need to worry about the great taking. And then what they say is, if you send us your money, we have a way of keeping your money safe from the great taking. And what I've said is that's probably true because they'll take it first.
Right.
Right. So.
Right. The other thing that we have recently found out is that Solari Inc. is a Delaware corporation. There are like 8 or 10 new Solari entities created through the Secretary of State's office in
Yeah, many of them have the word investment in them.
Right.
Right. So, that could be perfectly legit, but unfortunately it might not be. So that's a concern. So that's why if you, and this doesn't just apply to Solari and Catherine Austin Fitz, this applies to anybody you're doing business with. The extent of the cybercrime and fraud to trick you on the internet is unbelievable. And again, as we've covered here, they have neurowarfare and all sorts of mind control techniques to trick you. This has become a very big industry and a very sophisticated industry, which means if you're dealing with somebody, this is why you need to know the people you're dealing with. This is why you need to know your banker. You need to have a relationship with them. You need to meet them in person. And you need to, if you're dealing with somebody on the internet, you need to make sure you are at their social media account or their website, and you don't just assume if you get an email that it's them. Now, we have a number on our website, and I'm listed in the phone book, and so luckily we've had people who started to go down the road emailing and getting interested in with this one particular imposter, and then they call and they make they say, I want to make sure this is the right. They're not a subscriber, so they don't have access to get on the website in the way a subscriber does, and so they call, and then our office tells them, no, that's not Catherine. So I don't do consultations, and The only thing we ever charge is our subscription fee. So if somebody says you can get on a community or you can get a consultation, that's fraud. That's a fraudulent offer.
Yes, and it appears that there's some precious metal investing as a subject too, which is an area that you need to know who you buy precious metals
Right.
from. And if you have an IRA, it's even more important because you'll never actually take delivery of the precious metals. So
Lou had a list of those fake emails. Look at all the fake emails. Let's pull them up. So you've got Solari-report.com, Solari-investment.com, Solari-report.com, Proton Mail, Gmail, Outlook. And that's funny because, Outlook is one of the domains that bounces our emails and won't let them through.
we're going to have to use a relay service to get our regular newsletters to people who have AT&T and
Microsoft
accounts.
Microsoft.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
So
this is really actually quite dangerous.
yes, it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. And there are stories of people who have had, experienced identity fraud and then find themselves arrested because of what the person who stole their identity did. We have a great interview at Solari. It's an old interview, but it's still excellent, by Bob Sullivan, who I think is the best journalist on cybercrime in the world. He's outstanding. And we just did a great interview with him in 2024. Sophisticated Cybercrime is Growing. Protect Yourself with Bob Sullivan. He's got a great Substack, and he does a podcast with ARP, because there's no doubt that the plus 60 age group is the number one target for the more lucrative ones with investment. And anyway, Bob is a wealth of information about how to protect you. I should also mention that Carolyn and I did a major piece on protecting yourself against financial fraud. And we're just about to move it to hard copy, and the PDF is going to be published this afternoon. So it's not up this morning, but it will be up this afternoon. And it walks you through, sort of what the actions are that will protect you, and then the marketing techniques they use so that you won't fall prey to the scam. And one of the things we did when we published this was, because Carolyn and I just did this incredible brainstorm of every fraud we dealt with, which, as you can imagine, are in the thousands.
We certainly didn't cover all of them.
Well, it was really funny because the brainstorm, remember, Carolyn, it just grew and grew and grew. And it was like, wow, I didn't realize it had been, exactly that much. But anyway, and we just distilled it down to all the, the things you could do. But what I decided to do was I decided to use a new movie. It was the movie of the week that week, but we used it in this thing because it does such a good job of helping you understand how sophisticated this industry is. So the drug cartels realized they could make a lot more in cybercrime than they could in traditional drug narcotics trafficking. And so you're talking about major sophisticated corporate operations. Anyway, the movie's called The Beekeeper, and it's sort of a B grade action film. And we had it as movie of the week, but it gives you a great idea of how these kinds of it tells the story of an investment scam and of the woman who lost the money committing suicide, because she was so distraught about, losing so much money.
It was for a charity.
It was for a charity that she was managing. And then, of course, it turns out she had a military guy as her tenant, and he decided to get to the bottom of what was going on and get revenge. But it helps you understand how sophisticated and how dangerous these operations are.
And how much money is involved.
I'm really glad we're covering this subject because we've had people contact us, and one woman was telling me that she's getting all these texts, and some of them are believable, and she's saying, you've got a parking fine. She's like, well, did I miss it in the mail? And so she starts to communicate with it. And then another woman told me that she got a call from her bank. Well, she thought it was her bank, and it was very well spoken person, knew so much about her. And in the end, she suspected it because they were just asking her for bank details, and obviously a bank doesn't do that. But it's everywhere in every avenue. And I got a call from my credit union, and they said, "Did you just spend £3 in England?" I said, "No, I did not." And that's what they do. They come in with a small amount to see if you're
Right.
going to this, and then they go for a higher number. And so they put a stop to it straight away. But
One of the things that's interesting, when the first time I interviewed Bob Sullivan on identity theft many years ago, I said, what is the action we can take that will both, he said, believe it or not, he said, check your bank and credit card online statements all the time. Just check them daily or regularly, because he said exactly that. They'll put through a little amount to test you, and if you get rid of it, you're fine. If you let it slip, then the next thing you know, you're in real trouble.
yeah,
Yeah. So I should mention, we're going to do term of the day, but I should mention this weekend, one of our favorite allies, somebody hacked their email and started sending out to all their contacts, please send my niece a gift card. My credit card won't work. One of those spoofs. And, and he had to go in and deal with it. And, the time that we spend at Solari on dealing with imposters, this is a big investment. This is a big business expense. This has a dramatic impact on how we spend our time and money. And of course, that's part of the design, because what your enemy is always trying to do is make money in a way that loses you money. So they're trying to make the target weaker and themselves stronger. And so they like to sting you in ways that make them money. Anyway.
Can I just point out that if all over the place we're supposed to be doing these digital ID. Well, imagine if somebody creates a digital ID in your name with their fingerprints and their eye scans. Do you exist?
People have had their identity stolen and then been put in jail for what the guy who stole their identity did. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the former head of MI6, announced when they were doing BritCard that you'd be insane to do an all country digital ID, because it was going to be hacked by the Chinese and it was going to wreak havoc. Said, this is crazy. This is a serious national security vulnerability. Don't do this.
Can I just say that this morning I was in a chat with some colleagues, and they were saying, one person was saying how good it is that these countries are stopping the internet for 15 and under, but they will have to have digital, IDs to basically go in there. And again, that's got to be, aren't they, Catherine? I'm sure I heard you say this. They're doing things like this to try and get parents to want to have the
what a
digital
great
ID
idea.
to track their
Let's
child.
create a system so that the guys who did Epstein will have complete control. So, you just need to explain, to the person, any person who says that, explain to them, why is it you want the pedophiles to control the internet and control your children with a digital ID? They need to understand who's going to control that system.
Right. That's a good point.
And there are tools to control what your children do on electronic devices. If parents choose not to do that,
Well, just don't give them an electronic device. They may, that your children will say the same thing that they say to every parent. I'm the only child in school, or I'm the only child in the world that doesn't have it. That is, I used that line when I was with I'm the only child in the world that doesn't have a pony. So basically, we all use that line, but you are the parents, you are in charge, not your child.
God forbid you should be the only parent who doesn't give Spectre 24/7 immediate access to your child and their subconscious.
It has been determined that the guys out in Silicon Valley at high levels do not give their children smartphones.
They know.
What does that tell you when that's their business and they choose not to give their children smartphones?
I don't know. Here's the thing. You are giving direct access to psychopaths, to your child, around your back. Is that really what you want to do?
Right.
I don't know. I've never found it was convenient to have psychopaths have direct access to children. I've never found that to be convenient or efficient.
Catherine, can we do the term of the day now?
Let's do
Please,
that.
absolutely.
Lou, do you have a slide on that? Spoofing and cyber squatting. Cyber squatting is similar to what we were talking about, the creation of companies or accounts that in anticipation of using that and keeping the real person with the real name from actually establishing an identity. And maybe they go in and trademark and before you have a chance to do it. And so you can't use your own intellectual property for your own purposes because somebody else has stolen it before you've even had a chance to secure your position. Spoofing is what we've shown is creating fake accounts, and that's what spoofing is creating. The Solari report here, that's a fake account. That is spoofing. So there are all sorts of technical terms for phishing and, all sorts of things like that. And, somebody my son's age, which is 32, will say, oh, everybody knows what that stuff is. Well, we will show you in a minute. The FBI reports that the most money that's taken from people who are over 60. And, I became 60 a while ago. So, there are a lot of people, and I'm much more sophisticated in internet areas than most of the people I know who are my age. So other than people who are in IT.
Do you want to just go through quickly through the FBI report?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you send Lou that video we were going to show of the woman whose identity had been stolen with squatting?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, maybe we'll show that another time. Okay, so the FBI every year does a cyber crime report, and they just published their new one for 2025 on April 6th. So this is right off the press, and I found these reports to be very interesting. Now, the FBI says, and Carolyn and I absolutely agree, that this is very underreported because if you look at what it takes to really take action on these crimes, it's a lot of time. It's going to be very hard for the FBI to deal with this many, to handle this many crimes, especially when the average loss is about 20,000. But here's an overview of the internet crimes in 2025 complaints. So Carolyn and I, again, think this is about 10 or 20% of the total, maybe even a smaller percent. But here are the complaints. They got 1 million complaints with 21 billion of total losses. The average loss was 20,699. It's a 26% increase over their reports in 2024. So, Polly, that shows a dramatic increase. And that's certainly my experience. Let's go back to that first chart. I just want to show by age. What you see is the biggest losses, 7.7 billion are 60 plus. And I think part of the reason is that group is less tech savvy, but also, is managing more investment funds. So they're targeted. 50 to 59, 3 billion, and then it drops down. I suspect the younger groups aren't reporting is right. Also part here. But okay, so let's go to the next chart. If you look at what's causing the number of complaints, what you see is phishing and spoofing. Phishing and spoofing is the big one, and it trails down from there. Extortion is big, and then investment is big. But investment is going to have the biggest, and data breach is a big one. And we're going to talk about healthcare further on, Polly, because, if there's a message of one of the things we're going to show you from the FBI is never give anybody your healthcare data. Okay, let's go to the next chart. We'll show it by amount. Did we have page 7? Yeah. So if you look at the crimes by total loss, the big one is the investment one, which is one of the reasons Carolyn and I are spending so much time trying to protect people from whatever they're doing. using my name or Solari's name, but business email compromise is the number 2. And interestingly enough, we'll see in the next chart, that is wire transfer. And the sophistication of trying to get people to wire money or fraudulent wires is a very big one. If you let's look a little bit closer at the circles, Lou. So what you can see here, interestingly enough, the big crime in investment is crypto. So you see that, this is happening with cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is making this much more possible to do these kinds of investment frauds because you get money transfers that are hard to track down or do anything about. You see over on the top circle on the right that the business email compromise, that orange is wire transfer. So we've got a lot of crypto scams and we've got wire transfer scams. That's where the big money is. Okay, so let's go on to the next chart. Okay, this is great, Polly. So this is where people lose their data. They have data breaches or ransomware. Take a look at this chart. The number 1 most insecure, dangerous area is healthcare and public health.
And how would that be? Give me some examples.
So you give your data, Whitney Webb just had an amazing, or I guess the Gray dossier just had an amazing piece on all the healthcare data that Oracle is rolling up. If there's a data breach and they have all your healthcare data from the government, from hospitals, from private sectors, from your doctors, and they roll it up into one database and then there's a breach, do you know the things that can go wrong? That data is not secure. So, ever since the litigation started in 98, I've hardly ever been to a doctor. But when I do, I make such an effort to make sure they have no data at all, or they will keep records before the laws changed in paper. So, it's one of the reasons I avoid doctors and hospitals. I don't want them to have my data. And don't ever sign a HIPAA form because that just gives them the ability to share all your data.
HIPAA is not there to protect you. HIPAA is there to allow access to your healthcare data of, millions of exceptions. Anybody who touches a healthcare company is exempt from not disclosing your HIPAA information.
So health insurance, they have all your data.
Yeah.
So are they the ones that are
hacked?
Hacking, yeah.
So I was a government regulator. I ran the agency that ran the largest mortgage insurance operation in the world at that time. And what I will tell you is the data leaked like a sieve. I would never trust the government. I assume that anything the government has in digital form has been shared many times over and is not secure.
Well, and remember what happened with Doge. I mean, a bunch of people, including Elon Musk, went in and had access to the government databases and allegedly, put it on stick drives and that sort of thing. I mean, it's all GSA data.
I basically, Naomi Wolf and I said this, our estimate, our guess is they transferred $1 trillion of private data in violation of the privacy laws into private AI. That was $1 trillion theft.
And you'll never know where the leak was. I mean, rarely would you ever find out, what the ultimate source was for. I mean, some of it's not scams, it's just violation of privacy. And, it could go into your social credit score
but I don't know who's using this data, because if you look at the extent to which X has protected this scam account, and it's been reported that, it's involving investment, people being defrauded with money and they will not take it down. Somebody's protecting that account, right? Who's that?
And by the way, tracing these bad accounts, we've found that at least in the major case, there's an operation in Nigeria, which shouldn't surprise anyone because that's where a lot of the fraud in the world comes from. But when dark web help.
So in 2017, we had a very serious hack. Essentially, it destroyed the website. We had to bring up a new website, on emergency rush. And it came from all over the world. They used to, because they put together teams of hackers all around the world, and they start coming in from, and it could be relay servers as well, but you're getting people coming in from 30, 40, 50 different countries.
Right.
Right.
And understand that once there's a breach, somebody has that information, they can sell it for large amounts of money. And that's what I meant when I said you won't know necessarily where the breach came, because your data might have been sold on the dark web.
Right. So when I say that you want to keep your life as analog as possible, as much as possible, just remember that there is no such thing as a digital system that has integrity. It doesn't exist. And I would argue that the whole development of the technology, that is intentional. So I think you need to be very, very, very careful.
Yeah, and with AI becoming more and more sophisticated, they can take your child's voice and have them call you saying, "Mummy, I need money now," and all that kind of stuff. It's
Right.
actually very concerning. So what, in layman's terms, what should the everyday viewer that's watching right now do to prevent this?
We
Okay,
had
so
a list, right?
Right. But before we go to the list, let me mention one other thing. AI slop. So talking about the investment of Solari's time, one of the things we spend a lot of time on these days at Solari is telling subscribers, don't listen to that video, that's AI slop. Or, we have a show on called Ask Catherine, where people submit questions and they recommend links, and more we're getting AI slop as the links, and we have to tell people that's AI slop, don't listen to that. So again, you need to know, if you don't know that a video is someone who you can trust or is worth listening to, first you need to make sure it's them, because it might not be them. People make fake videos with me or other experts all the time. But then the second thing is, you need to make sure there's no neurowarfare, mind control overlay, or, they're using electronics in, sort of ways that compromise the message or compromise you. And one way you can do that is whenever you get, sometimes you can quickly make a transcript of that video, and then you can run the transcript to fact check it. And it's pretty easy to do if you really want to. And if you don't know that something is credible, and the person is credible, and you're not sure it's them, you just need to assume that you can't trust it. And there was one that I kept telling people was AI slop, in my opinion, called Asian Guy. And I would explain to somebody why it was slop, and I would show them the fact check and why the different facts that were being held as true were not true. And, I'd walk through and I'd show somebody why it was, it wasn't reliable. And then literally the next week they'd send me another one from Asian Guy, and I'd have to explain it to them again. And then it happened a third time. And I thought, why are you getting tricked like this? So please be careful, because a video can feel good, it can be entertaining, it could sound great, but if you're not sure of the source, and if the source is unknown to you, be careful.
Yeah, and also have a family password, and don't say it out loud. Put it on a piece of paper. So, but if you've got a family password, I promise you that will help a lot of solutions just within your family, with those ridiculous emails, texts, or even phone messages that you may get that sounds like your daughter or your son's voice, or granny,
Right.
or something.
Okay, so let's talk about what people can do to improve their immune system, Carolyn.
Yeah. And
Imposter immune system.
much of this is going to sound very familiar to people who follow. Pay with cash or check. That is analog, and that is much safer. It cannot be traced, and for many reasons. Data cannot be assembled about what you buy with cash unless you're in. Also, another thing is, joining something digitally that it connects your telephone number. I used to have an account at Joanne before the private equity people did away with Joanne. And you get a discount if you give them your telephone number, and so they can track all your purchases at Joann's. And I made, I think I stopped using it, but there are a lot of ways you can get a discount. A lot of them, Kroger is probably the second biggest grocery store after Walmart out of Cincinnati, and they have a program where you have your ID through your telephone number and the prices are significantly lower. But I know that if I use that, Kroger is watching everything I purchase.
Right.
So oppose programmable money, which is worse than CBDC. If you've been convinced that CBDC is a bad idea, imagine that even the government isn't involved, and you may not like the government being involved, but there are certain things like FOIA and some government transparency provisions and laws that protect you somewhat from government doing things to you. Imagine it is Amazon doing it to you. Amazon is taking your identity and applying a social credit score and applying it to you is worse than the banks, the central banks. Avoid QR codes and phone apps. This is another thing. I know when I wanted to make reservations on Frontier Airlines to go out to the CHD conference, I virtually had to download an app for Frontier in order to achieve what I needed to do, because I didn't have my computer, I couldn't use my computer at that particular time. And if you have to download an app, you can do away with it as soon as you use it. When my bank wants me to do an app, everybody wants you to download our app. It'll be easier. And the fact is, they generally, so far, they usually have a way to do it without the app. And try making an insurance claim without using an app and your cell phone. Unfortunately, it may become impossible with the majority of insurance companies. And that's what I ran into. But I actually found out that my insurance company, I had an accident and I had to report the damage, and they wanted me to do it through an app on my cell phone. I said, can I just do it on my computer? Because computers are less hackable than cell phones are. And they said no. But I ended up having a problem establishing an ID. So I talked to the people who do programming, and they said, well, you can just send it to this email. I was like, okay, I'll send it to the email. But the regular people wouldn't tell me where there was an email that I could send my photos to. So don't do banking on your smartphone. Don't make big purchases on your smartphone. If you want to, we all understand buying from Amazon is last resort, but most of us do it at least for some purposes. If you're going to make an Amazon purchase, do it through your computer and not your cell phone. Cell phones are the most hackable things out there. Now, fiber is the safest form of getting the internet. Fiber optics. The next most unsurveillable way is cable, which is where we have Spectrum in Cincinnati. That's cable. The next worst is a cell. So if you get your internet through AT&T, for example, that's not cable and that's not fiber. That is, they're hooking it up and using the cell waves, the cell communication, that is fairly hackable. So if you want, and wiring your computer to your box is much safer than using Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is fairly surveillable, particularly by the police who are driving by your house and have these scanners that are able to pick up everything. Avoid contributing information to the control grid. We've talked a little bit about that, but using these digital coupons, if you take your cell phone into a store, you can be tracked, and they can use things like surveillance pricing, and you may pay more than somebody else does because they know who you are. So putting your cell phone in a Faraday bag, leaving it in your home or leaving it in your car, you're much less able to be tracked and surveilled and be subject to higher
So
prices.
so one thing I will tell you is some of the big box stores, including Walmart, Carolyn, have biometrics, and they can track you with the biometrics even if you have your phone in a Faraday bag. So you need to know about that. And now they're putting the prices on the shelves. They're making those digital, so they can literally change them in theory when you walk up.
Right.
And that's why I wouldn't shop. I do everything I can to avoid a store that does algorithmic pricing.
And there was a scandal and a lawsuit in actually, I think, an investigation by AGs or the Justice Department against the dollar store because they were charging a different amount at the cash register than was on the shelves.
Wasn't that Dollar General?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, be careful.
Okay. Be careful. Yes, but beware what you text, especially personally identifiable information. Don't put your social security number on a text. Texting is less secure than just regular email on your smartphone even. So, scanning something is less surveillable than typing it into an email.
So can I just jump in for a second, Carolyn, because we only have 4 more minutes. I do want to mention again, you need to have a bank. So Carolyn and I did a 4-part series on how to find a great local bank and build a successful relationship. And you need to have a bank where there are people who know you and you can call them. And if you have a problem with your bank account or with a credit card that comes through the credit union or the bank, you have a relationship so you can get a problem fixed. Or as Polly was just describing, they will call you. So doing business with financial institutions where you have a human relationship can protect you from an enormous number of things. If you bank at a big bank where nobody knows you, that is how, all sorts of fraudsters can make all sorts of trouble for you because there's nobody at the bank who knows you, and to try and get things stopped or fixed, or turned around can end up taking days and days or weeks. So, having human relationships is what can stop a lot of this crazy stuff.
Yeah, Lou just put up on the screen. We did a whole series on financial rebellion.
Right.
So you can find that on banking.
But also, if someone calls you, just thinking about this bank scamming thing, if someone calls you and says they're your bank and they sound really, really, I'll just call you straight back.
Right, exactly. And it's the same if they say they're from the FBI or the government or the police. You get these ones who say they're the local sheriff or police. Just get their name and number, hang up, and call them back.
Right.
Also, look at the extensions on emails. If they say we're from Amazon and the extension does not say Amazon.com, that's a real tip-off. It ain't Amazon.
I know.
Right, and many of those emails have Trojan viruses in them that can give them access to your computer.
Which is one of the reasons not to use a QR code.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, please with the QR codes. I feel like I'm losing that battle every time I speak to people. It's getting worse right now. But people need to share this show, people. This is a really good show to wait.
Well, I hate to say this, all the people who do that, I don't know how, but we need to get them into a theater and make them watch Neurowarfare and some of the mind control, because they're ingesting a huge amount of subliminal programming and entrainment. And they, I'll give you a perfect example. There was somebody had put up a tweet that said the president made all these promises and he didn't keep any of them, and he kind of listed it and went through them. The next video was a video of a commentator walking up to a guy who was standing by a lake, and he said, "What do you like about the president?" And he said, "I love the fact that he keeps his promises." And the commentator, in a very calm way, said to him, "What are the promises that he's kept that mean the most to you?" And the guy could not remember one promise that he had kept. He couldn't think of one example. And he thought for about 30 seconds. I mean, it was that's neurowarfare. That's ingesting huge amounts of entrainment technology and subliminal programming. It's real. It's going on. And if you're going to, survive the great poisoning and you're going to survive this level of financial fraud, you need to know that. And I just want to bring up again, it's for subscribers, but we're just about to publish this major piece that Carolyn and I did on how to protect yourself against financial fraud, what you can do to protect us, but also the different techniques they use. And it really helps to understand all these techniques. So, and Carolyn has a list of another 20 things, but they're all in the big piece, so you can get them there,
And
right?
go with analog whenever you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
And human relationship.
Yeah.
Real people who know you and you know them and you have a relationship.
And don't panic, people out there. You have a perfectly good brain that God's given you. So you need to pray big, you need to stand firm, and you need to never settle. This was a fantastic show. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Catherine. It was very educational. And everybody out there, remember those emails, the fraudulent Solari, the fraudulent Catherine Austin Fitz emails and scammers out there. So they've just tell them one more time, the real Solari.com is your website. And that
So consider subscribing, because you do not get everything on Financial Rebellion. We have all sorts of things behind the paywall.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Catherine and Carolyn, thank you so much for a really fantastic show. And we'll see you next week on Financial Rebellion.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we're live. Can you tell everyone your name, please?
Hi, my name is Dr. Armighty May. I am a practicing integrative veterinarian for dogs and cats. I've been in practice since 2005, and I'm here to share information about how you can keep your animals healthy. And one of the keys is understanding that there is an alternative to vaccinations, and that's called titer testing, TITER. What that is a blood test that checks the antibody levels that an animal has. This is used in people as well, and it checks the immune status of that animal. When I was in vet school as a freshman vet student, I was required to get the rabies vaccine, as all vet students are, in order to become veterinarians, since we are at a high risk being in the field of animal care. I received my 3 series of rabies shots as a freshman vet student, and then later on, about 10 years ago, I had my titer checked at a veterinary conference, and it was plenty adequate. Therefore, there was no rationale for boostering it. This same standard is not currently being applied to our precious animal companions, and it ought to. That's why I'm here today to urge you, when you see your veterinarian, to ask for a titer test instead of more shots that could potentially cause increased risk for autoimmune diseases, cancer, allergies, and other health issues in our precious animal companions. This is a simple, quick blood test that any veterinarian can perform. It involves taking a sample of blood, sending it to a lab, and checking the titer. The titer comes back adequate, which is determined with a numeric value. That animal is deemed immune. What we also are trying to accomplish is changing the laws so that these titers will be acknowledged as valid alternatives to vaccine boosters. There also are things called homeopathic remedies, and I am trained in classical homeopathy for animals, which can serve as a way to remedy any vaccinosis that may occur. Vaccinosis is a term to describe injury that can occur from a vaccine. And there are various remedies that are known to assist an animal in healing from this injury. One of the more well-known one is called Thuya. I've used this in animals of my own who were vaccine injured and had good results. Another alternative to vaccines is something called a nosode. This is a homeopathic alternative to vaccination. Some people use it as alternatives to vaccinations in their own children. I know of a veterinarian who exclusively uses no-sods, except for the rabies vaccine, since that is legally required. If enough people band together, talk to their legislators, talk to their veterinarians, and bring awareness to the importance of titer testing and the fact that we should have laws in the books to acknowledge that titers are a valid, scientifically proven way to show that an animal has immunity, then we don't have to have unnecessary vaccines being given to animals that leads to unnecessary health consequences.
So when you give a rabies vaccination to a dog, for example, do you know the ingredients in the rabies?
There are some rabies vaccines that contain mercury. I purchased the ones that are thimerosal free because mercury is a neurotoxin. Of course, the film Trace Amounts, which is a wonderful documentary that illustrates the toxicity of mercury to the brain in children who were susceptible to autism, as well as how that affects our animal companions, is something that we need to be aware of. Mercury in conjunction with aluminum are synergistically neurotoxic.
But what do you know what else is in the actual, do you know the ingredients in a dog rabies vaccination?
The full ingredient list is not something that is made available to us as veterinarians. Those are what are known as trade secrets. There are veterinarians like myself who are very conscientious in minimizing the amount that's given per the body weight of the patient. A Great Dane and a Chihuahua should not be receiving the same dose, for example. There is a website called protectthepets.com that was started by a veterinarian by the name of Dr. John Robb, who is devoted to improving the health of animals by raising awareness of the importance of not over-vaccinating. Now, there are other aspects to health, of course, but in this area, we need to raise awareness because too many animals are dying too soon because of over-vaccination.
I agree with that.
There are also animals who can die because of getting parvo, and I have seen that in my career. So there needs to be a robust understanding of these issues and the pros and cons. It's not always all or nothing, but I do advocate the use of titers, which should be made more readily available so people don't have to over-vaccinate their animals.
Okay, so what is parvo?
Parvo is a viral illness. Dogs get it through exposure to contaminated fecal matter. It's readily in the environment, in dog parks and places where dogs gather. And dogs can fall very ill and get severe bloody diarrhea and vomiting, and they can die. And if they don't get treatment, which can be quite costly, $1,500 or more in some instances to treat this viral illness, it can be very, very devastating for an animal and the pet guardian to lose an animal to this illness. So I do recommend that there be proper immunity provided at the appropriate age, and then monitoring closely, checking titer levels as the animal ages so that we can make sure this animal has the right amount of immunity. It'd be great to do an unvax-vax study in our dogs and cats. The funding for such a study would be quite a momentous achievement to obtain because you can imagine the controversy that's inherent in this topic. And I've helped with fundraising for other studies in the animal health sector that are also controversial in other ways, and had to organize fundraising events to just merely get any kind of funding. But I think from an academic standpoint, that is a question that merits inquiry that requires a large quantity of funding to accomplish.
So parvo is this illness you just described, and so you recommend the vaccine but then check titers, but you don't know the ingredients in a parvo vaccination for a dog.
The full ingredient list is not something that is made available to veterinarians. There are companies that may provide certain ingredient lists to veterinarians who are more closely aligned or working for the companies. I have to operate within the paradigm of the information that's made available to me to make the decisions that are least injurious to my patients, because as a veterinarian I took an oath to protect animals and relieve their suffering. And part of that is to take risks at times and to measure a risk-benefit ratio and to make the decision that is in the best interest of the patient in front of me.
Okay. I mean, I just think I can't understand injecting anything into a human or an animal when you don't know what entirely you're injecting in. That concerns me greatly. I hear from people the whole time about their dog was fine, their dog had a rabies shot, the dog is now itching the whole time, the dog has got a tumor growing somewhere. I mean, I think a vax-on-vax dog study would be amazing because I'm pretty sure I know the results. But what I do think is good is that you care enough to come here and sit down and try and teach the people how to have healthy pets. That's good. Thank you for that. What other tips have you got for our viewers?
Well, people can use alternatives to flea and tick control products that are less toxic. For example, diatomaceous earth, as long as it's not inhaled, because that can irritate the airways if that happens. But if it's done in a way gently applied to the animal's hair coat, that can effectively take care of a flea issue. Of course, there's a multifactorial component. It involves environmental control, vacuuming, washing with hot water, and keeping things that are attractants out of the vicinity, but or for pests in general. But there are essential oils that can be used. You know, it goes into depth. I mean, there's homeopathy, there's herbal medicine, there are tinctures, there are a lot of things that people can use that are alternatives to pharmaceuticals. A wholesome plant-based diet is something that has shown relief in allergies. Dogs that have itchy skin, they oftentimes have allergies to chicken and beef protein, and more studies are showing that dogs, being omnivores, can thrive on a wholesome, well-balanced, nutritionally complete plant-based diet. It's also lower in toxins such as arsenic, which is a carcinogen found in chicken, and we have an epidemic of cancer in our animal companions, with dogs over the age of 2 having cancer as the leading cause of death now. So minimizing carcinogens such as arsenic, mercury, which is found in a lot of seafood, all sorts of PCBs, dioxins, heavy metal toxins that were found in alarmingly high concentrations in the pet urine and blood samples that were tested in a 2008 Environmental Working Group study.
And now how can people follow you or find out where you practice or come and see you if they want to with their animals? How can they do that?
My website is veganvet.net. I practice in both Arizona and California, and I provide consultations as well as house calls in Malibu, California and surrounding areas, as well as Chino Valley, Arizona and surrounding areas.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the people?
To talk to your veterinarian about offering titers at an affordable rate, and consider starting a dog boarding facility that doesn't require vaccinations, because this is one of the dilemmas that many people have confronted. They have to go out of town, take their dog for grooming, and they are required to show proof of rabies vaccination and other vaccines in order to obtain these needed veterinary services. So someone in our medical freedom community can stand up and say, hey, I'm going to lead the charge here. I'm going to start a dog boarding facility that doesn't require vaccinations. And you'll get a lot of business. It takes work, but it will make a big difference for animals in the long run.
And so you said where they can follow you on?
Veganvet.net.
Are you on Instagram?
I'm on Instagram at veganhousecallvet. I'm on Facebook. Twitter is at veghouseCallvet.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
For doing
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.